Hello and welcome to the latest episode from Elemental, where we are today talking about the smart home ecosystem and the future of the energy market. I'm delighted to have a fantastic panel of guests and experts with me today, where we're really going to be diving into what does the future of the home look like? What are the technologies that are in there? How are these helping us to achieve net zero? And perhaps, what are some of the challenges and what's perhaps does the future really look like? So we've got Richard Septon is the country manager in the UK and Ireland for Tado. We have Alec Hussain here, who is co-founder of our SNRG. We have Ian Turk, product manager at Energy Systems Catapult Living Lab, and Rosanna Lawn, who is Global Brand and Strategic Partnership Director at Project Etopia. Now, these are all fantastic organizations, fantastic companies. I'd love to hear a bit more about it, what you guys do, and sort of how your organizations also sort of contribute, if you like, towards the this smart home ecosystem that we're talking about, the future of the energy market. So Ian, could I come to you first? Could we give us a quick overview of Living Lab and
certainly.
That is exactly.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Ian Turk. I'm the product manager for Energy Systems Catapult Living Lab. For those that you don't know, the Living Lab is a network of connected homes across the UK, and it's joined up using a web portal, which makes us very easy to recruit participants and manage trials. And we've also got the ability to read and control devices throughout the home. At the moment, we've got integrations with Tado, with the ability to read smart meters, and we've also got a Samsung IoT connection, so we can add IoT devices in there. We're looking next integrations over an electric vehicle charging and management platform. The lab's been set up to do three things: to help innovators, big and small, test new products out in front of consumers, help policymakers decide on the regulations and the policies to support the future domestic energy market. And then finally, we're building this very rich data set, which will show domestic energy consumption and combine it with consumer insight.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ian. And you mentioned Tado, so I'll come to Richard next. Give a quick overview of sort of Tado and where you see the Tado playing in the future.
Hi all, so Richard Sefton, country manager for Tado. So Tado, the UK and Europe's one of the leading smart thermostat brands. Primarily with 22 million homes in the UK, all getting their heat from gas. Smart thermostats really are designed to reduce the consumption through using smart intelligent skills which we have within our product. So particularly with more and more people working from home at the moment, one of our major use cases is actually only heating the rooms you need, which actually is great for me at the moment. So keeping nice and warm.
Staying in the bedroom there, Richard.
Exactly, in the spare room. So I don't have to get hefty bills by working from home at the moment. So, but yeah, that's but primarily what we do is we sell our products across the retail channels. It's broadly a very consumer electronic. We also work quite extensively with leading utilities, energy suppliers across Europe. So that's where we're proposing and putting our product into new bundles and then utilising the data, which is really important to understand more about the home's energy consumption relating to heat, but also how the home performs, and working out ways to engage the customer to hopefully improve their carbon efficiency of their home.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Richard. And from Spain to the other side of the world, I could maybe go to Alec. I think you're in Australia now, aren't you? But maybe you could tell us a bit more about the company that you founded, and yeah, where you see sort of the future of the industry going, and the role you're trying to play in that.
Absolutely. So my name's Alec Hussain. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of SNRG. We're really focused on affordably enabling climate positive communities to thrive. And we're focused on removing the cost and complexity of the clean energy and mobility transitions for new build property developers. We really believe in the power of community microgrids and shared on-demand e-mobility options as we make the transition from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles, mobility as a service, and finally onto autonomous. So we're really looking at the pushing the envelope on innovation and looking at clean slate opportunities for new ways to build these thriving climate positive communities for people. So that's what we're focused on.
Brilliant. Okay, climate positive communities. That sounds great. And maybe come to you, Rosanna. Next, what about Project Etopia? Is that a play on Project Utopia or?
Yeah, actually, Etopia stands for Economic and Environmental Utopia. So it's bred off this idea that to build a utopia, it has to be both economic and environmental on balance, and economic being affordable and scalable, and environmental being sustainable and socially acceptable. So that kind of bred the idea into what Project Etopia is today. Like, how do we create a product that is affordable, scalable, sustainable and socially acceptable, so that people who are living in kind of social housing, etc., in the UK can have access to a much more premium quality product where they don't have damp in their houses. They're not making that question of kind of heat or fuel poverty isn't really a thing because the house generates its own renewable energies. This was kind of bred on the journey from our CEO, who suffered from homelessness quite a lot when he was younger. From about the age of 15, he suffered at the social housing system in the UK, and he really wanted to make a change. So that's where the name actually comes from. It's the ethos, and it is the way we do things at Etopia. And that kind of led him to invent a system that we're referring to as Ecitech, which is the combination of energy technologies, being how you use, store and generate energy, construction technologies, which is we use an MMC hypersit panel. So it's what do you build out of? And our panels are like double passive house standard. They're really incredible. And then intelligent technologies, how does the consumer use their home? What IoT devices do you have in there? How do people actually feel, live? And how do all of these different three components holistically integrate so that they actually all talk to each other, so that you get the maximum efficiency within the home? So we've started building new builds. We've built in the UK, Africa, we're going to the US in the new year, deploying these new build systems that we've managed to make as affordable as on cost as traditional, but some of our EPC ratings are coming in at 110 out of 100. It's incredible statistics. We're doing amazing things with what we've created here. And my job really is, the business is set up and it's got so many different avenues. So we've got the IoT company where we've developed our own product range. We've got the engineering company where we kind of saw the future of what the government was saying about air source heat pumps and yada, 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 but there was never going to be enough engineers to fit everything that the government's been talking about. So we were like, let's have our own engineering company because that secures our supply chain as we grow. We've got a custom division where we do kind of one-off grand design, like buildings that are net zero too. And then we have the UK division that's split into private developments, which is kind of, land ac, build, sell. And then we do Powered by Etopia, where we actually offer our core system to other traditional builders and people who are trying to reach these governments push for net zero and green agendas, but they don't have the system that's affordable and viable. So we can now offer them the system and go, you can put whatever you want on it on the outside, whatever you want on the inside, but here's our core walls, MEP solution, IoT device. This will get you to a net zero ready solution. And we've started offering that to the market. And my job is really to align the messages and partnerships across all the business so that we've got a continuity of message, but also to see where the opportunities are between, say, IoT and the custom division or whatever it may be, to really maximize what we're trying to do in the sustainability space.
Okay, great. Lots going on there. Thanks, Rosanna. Maybe I could come to Ian, because you talked to Rosanna a little bit about, kind of new builds and getting to an incredibly high EPC rating there, didn't you? I don't know, Ian, with the Living Lab, presumably this is more focused on kind of the retrofit, properties, and you're kind of going in and putting in technology into those. Is that right?
It's very much about building a picture of domestic energy consumption in the UK. So what I will say on the new build front, you know, we've got examples of places where we would want to work with, say, social housing providers that have got new build programs and also evaluate the livability. You know, because this is one of the important things is you can do these things. Sometimes they work, actually the performance works and it's fine, but it's actually not very livable, the tech. You know, the house is uncomfortable, or, you know, sort of it's difficult, there's the usability issues. And sometimes the as installed functionality or performance isn't there, either because of poor design specification, or sometimes, and it's interesting that Rosanna mentioned that, you know, there's this, they felt the need to have their own skilled technicians because the installation is sometimes so important in terms of effectiveness to the performance, you know, with fabric, with insulation, and also the same with heating systems. So, but the primary focus is very much on building this network of homes so that we can reflect and create a portrait of domestic energy consumption in the UK.
And what have you found so far? Have you found anything you'd like to share with the audiences in terms of anything that's been surprising, maybe?
In terms of the heating, actually one of the things we found is that heating, giving people better control over their heating, actually produces better outcomes in terms of comfort, and also puts them in control of their bills a lot better. So this actually has quite an important message in social housing, where some social housing providers are quite conservative about what heating controls they'll install, and you know, they try and keep it simple and think, oh well, the tenant doesn't want to engage with complex tech. But the reality is, when you put in systems that people can engage with better, actually the outcomes are much better. It becomes a win-win, you know, so everybody's happy, you know, and then I think this is one of the very important messages, that, you know, we need to be doing things that everybody can benefit from. You know, and there's a lot of concern when you start to speak to Ofgem, you start to speak to government about exclusion, you know, that the future energy market might exclude certain participants, either because they can't access the technology, you know, because there's a technophobia, they, you know, it's just not what they're into, or secondly, because it's expensive to go and put in, and, you know, so there's that element sat there in the background.
And I'll come to maybe Richard. Did you want to sort of build on that? Would you agree? These products aren't that complicated, are they? Is that the barrier? What would you say is the?
I think it's quite interesting you said there, like you kind of associated the word in complex with technology. It's almost like technology and smart solutions are not there to be complex, but there's obviously a bit of a stigma attached to it. Oh, it's on my smartphone, it's going to be a lot more complex. But I don't know about any of you guys, but I've never worked out how to work my microwave apart from pressing the on-off button. I think it's very similar to how you operate your heating system. People, like, heating systems are not being designed with the user in mind, really. They've been designed just simply on-off, and they've been, you know, we've been wasting energy. There's, you know, 22 million homes, as I said, with a gas boiler, and, you know, smart home smart thermostat penetration is probably around 15-20% in the UK, and there's a lot of work to be done to get customers to adopt this technology so that actually they can enjoy the comfort and enjoy the control, but also understand more about how much their heating is costing them. And I think that's the thing. Like, you know, the heating bill in the home takes up 80% of your total utility bill, and so it's understanding what can I do to actually make that reduce and be a bit more efficient and be more comfortable. So if you give people better control and it's easier to manage, then that'll come naturally. And we'll see.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I've just unplugged my smart meter. I hate it reminding me just how much I've spent the last couple of weeks because it's been so cold down here.
I mean,
but we've mentioned, like, you know, reverse engineering it. So it's not like this is how much you've spent, this is how much you spent. Turning it round on its head and being like, this is how much you've saved the planet. This is how you've contributed to sustainability. Make it like a personal competition, because people love it. My friend got one of those apps, you know, where you see how much you save money, and he got so into playing the game of saving money that he saved loads of money. And it's like, if you can turn it into a game or a competition, or in community sharing, Alec, I don't know whether with SNRG, whether you can turn it into like a bit of a competition with your neighbors, who's winning the gold star this week for saving the most energy or whatever, that you might actually flip it on its head and you play into what consumers like, which is kind positive, of winning competition, positive spins, things like that.
I mean,
gamification are areas that I think a lot of companies are looking at, and critically, I think the thing that the industry is really starting to pick up on is understanding consumers far more, being far more consumer focused. Traditionally, property, energy, it really hasn't come from a place of digitization or deeply understanding consumer needs, and that is starting to dramatically change now, which is having huge impacts on the ability for people to engage with these product sets. But also modeling positive behavior, getting into the psychology of behavior change is super important to understand to drive adoption. Exactly what Roseanne is saying, starting to identify, okay, the community around you, this is the sort of the average usage rates that people are putting up. Having the benchmarks and the modeling for people to look towards really starts to drive that positive behavior change, and doing it in interesting ways that they're going to understand. Kilowatts really doesn't mean a lot to people. As Rosanna said, putting it into a context that they understand and care about really has a dramatic benefit to it.
Brilliant. I mean, Alex, one of the things that we've done is actually taken it away from kilowatts, and actually we've run a trial where we presented heating as a warm hour. So you're putting this as a, you know, so for a level of warmth for a set point, you know, for an hour, this is how much it's going to cost. And as soon as you do that, it breaks this traditional link between, you know, this failure to understand what the heating is, because as you say, a kilowatt hour is a very abstract measure, whereas actually, do I feel warm or cold, you know, actually means something, you know, tangible to consumers. And this is, I mean, one of the, you know, good interface designs, good intelligent ways of presenting the information are very helpful for helping consumer engagement with the heating. I mean, historically, and I can say this as having worked for one of the major heating appliances manufacturers in the UK, if you talk to the average consumer, the total engagement with the heating was, I don't want it to break down.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, you know, in fact, that you know, I had so much consumer feedback. Well, I don't notice it unless I'm cold. You know, it stopped working. So having these smart devices, you know, and I think, you know, the likes of Tado, the likes of Nest, that have actually changed the relationship with the heating system. It you know, is a very, very powerful proposition going forward.
Great, thanks. Let's just move it on. Should we talk a bit about the changing sort of supply to the energy market a bit now? Ian, you mentioned, is it one of the next things you're looking at with Living Labs is electric vehicles and sort of connecting that all up. I don't know if Alec is also something you wanted to sort of talk about. What are the, I don't know, kind of trends that you're seeing, that, you know, in terms of what's that going to look like in the future, and how do you expect kind of consumers to engage with it? What have you found maybe so far, or what are you planning to do next, Ian, with Living Lab?
I mean, the EV thing is new to us, you know, so we're starting to talk. We're talking with several suppliers of charging platforms, charging home charge points. It's very important to domestic energy consumption, particularly if heat becomes electrified. That, you know, sort of, you know, potentially, you know, you're talking about tripling energy loads into a house, you know, so that's got massive impacts on the grid, and it's got massive impacts on the electrics within the home, you know, sort of most people's, you know, sort of circuit board won't take, you know, sort of those sort of loadings. You add into the mix then, you know, one of the success stories has been the amount of PV we've got on people's roofs, but we've probably not maximized it in terms of, you know, storing it when it's good. So does it, you know, there's questions about, does it go into your hot water? Does it go in, you know, you've got a battery in the home, or do you use it to charge your car up? So it's, the future is going to be about intelligently using the energy in the home. So one, you don't overload the system, but two, also that the consumer gets the most value out of that energy, that they, you know, that they're receiving the reward for offering their flexibility.
I think it's a really interesting point. You're right. It's a new area, and there's a lot of research that needs to be done in this space. The interesting thing is going to be the impact. I mean, there is going to be enough energy for us to charge our cars up. The national grid are saying this at every opportunity. It's going to be the distribution network that is going to suffer the consequences. It's, you know, you're going to have a level of intelligent orchestration of electric vehicle charging at the local level, because if an entire community throws on their chargers at the same point, you're going to have some serious difficulties at that substation and distribution level. So that's there's you know, there is a need for a product suite and a product set out there to orchestrate that. So absolutely, Ian, you know, looking forward to hopefully the Living Lab starting to delve into this area, because it's definitely going to be on the horizon as a key use case and a need for the market.
And Rosanna, I don't know if that's something that you've been looking at as well, with sort of the various different kind of partnerships and the different players sort of in the network to orchestrate kind of together, or do you see that as kind of something happening a bit further in the future?
No, I mean, if you talk to anyone in our business, it's almost like happening now. We have to prepare for it now. And we actually know, Alec, we've been talking to SNRG a little bit about some of our developments as well, and you'll have conversations and meetings, and Joe was on one last week, our founder, and he started talking about autonomous cars and all this kind of thing, and people were putting in the comments, we don't want to know about cars, we want to know about our houses. And Joe's like, but no, like this is going to be part of your developments going forward. All of our homes are fit and wired ready for EV chargers to be added to it. We are looking at how we can microgrid our developments in the future, how we can share energy across the community as and when needed. Going back to that gamification, is there that element of, I don't know, you save this amount of energy and then you might be able to sell it for your neighbor at a reduced rate, or do you know, something like that? How can we use the energy within the community and keep the energy within the community and not have to draw down from anywhere else? How can somebody who's saved a lot of energy then get a benefit for saving and not using all that energy, but the house is still producing the same amount as other people because it's got the same amount of PV, it's got a battery storage, etc., etc. How can they then use that, and then how can you distribute that evenly around the community so everybody's got the energy that they need? The people who use it too much can buy off the people who don't use it as much as they do, etc., etc., to really like keep that loading balanced, which is something that we're kind of exploring at the moment as well.
Interesting. Yeah.
That point around local generation, it's going to be cheaper than the cost of, you know, the distribution and transmission of the energy. So it is that the game is going to be, how can we maximize the use of the energy within the local environment? Because as soon as you start to export, I can see 5-10 years down the line a world where export tariffs don't exist and they potentially go negative. They're experimenting with stuff like that here in Western Australia, where you start to see in places like Perth that you only get paid for your energy between 3 and 9 p.m. because there is too much solar coming off people's grids, so coming off people's roofs. So that game of using the energy in your local area is going to become more and more important, and EVs are going to play more and more of a role in that space in the future.
Cool. Interesting. Right. So I'm going to sort of move it on and sort of back to perhaps, net zero and being, quite practical. What's the journey? What are the key steps that we need to do next, do you think? I'm going to come to you, Richard, first. What do we need to do next to really be realistic in achieving kind of net zero in the home?
Engagement, like 100% engagement. I was really pleased with, obviously, Boris Johnson's announcement last week with his 10-point plan. Target is to get 600,000 heat pumps installed, which will go some way to electrifying heat in UK homes, but that's by 2028. And I was thinking, how on earth are you going to get people to convert to a heat pump? You don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to spend £11,000 on getting a heat pump and fully retrofit my home. It just doesn't happen. And so, give you a little story as well, just regarding my home. When I moved into this semi-detached house 3 years ago, I obviously got Tado installed, and it was freezing cold. And I just didn't understand why it was so cold in my house. So I got one of our data scientists to look at how quickly my home is losing heat and just do a benchmark comparison to other homes with Tado, to see if I had an open window, which I didn't realise. And my home was hemorrhaging heat. You could see it on the cool down rate. And then I discovered that I had this suspended floor. And I should have probably checked this before I actually bought the house, but the suspended floor was a trapdoor underneath my stairs. I found it, and then I went under it, and there was no insulation underneath my house. That's a bit like trying to keep warm in winter by just wearing a t-shirt. So I fully insulated it, and now it's, you can see the cool down rate on the on my Tado is less. So I save heat a lot better. But if I did that because I was quite proactive and I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. But there's so many homes on my street which I know have got the same problem as I don't realise they've got it. So how do we convince homes that they are incredibly inefficient and they are losing as much heat as they're storing in their home? How do you get them to gamify or understand where they can save energy? What's their biggest problem? We did a study on the back of my little research into my home. I studied at the start of this year, which compared homes in UK with homes across Europe. So comparing Swedish, German, French, Italian, Spanish homes. And we wanted to understand how quickly homes lost heat based on weather data being the same and etc. Homes in the UK lost heat 3 times quicker than homes on the continent, particularly compared to German homes.
What's the Germans? Yeah.
It's scary, but 44% of our homes are pre-war. They're all kind of Victorian, 1930s, sort of like terrace houses. And that's the problem. So we need to go for a big retrofit, like, insulating homes, making them, as you say, putting solar batteries, but also electrifying the heat. And you're not going to do that overnight, as I said. So we've got to go on a journey over the next 5 years, understanding more about the home, offering personal insights to that customer so they can understand where they score, where they rate, and then they can make decisions based on government incentives to actually do the retrofit they need.
I was just going to say about kind of helping them understand their home a little bit better using sensors so they understand which rooms are more leaky than others. What's the point in going and insulating the back wall when actually your leaky rooms are at the front, and you can use sensor data to actually analyze that, and you don't have to fork out a huge cost from the beginning. You can do it a lot more targeted using IoT, smart home devices, technologies to actually locate the key points of issues in your home without having to send you around to their basements to insulate them for them.
I completely agree. It's the role of the energy supplier, to a degree, to engage that customer with those sensors or devices, connecting the home and understanding more about it. So yeah, that's what I would say. Engagement over the next couple of years is absolutely key. Otherwise, we will not get people equipping their homes with all the technology we've just spoken about.
Energy companies seem just quite happy to just sort of send you a bill, and that's my relationship with my energy company. isn't it?
There are exceptions to that, but I mean, you can tell an amazing amount just from using the smart meter reading data, you know, and there's people working on ideas for generating smart EPCs using smart meter readings, you know, and you can plot a curve by energy consumption. I mean, of course, that does start to get more complicated when you've got more electric loading and you can't pick out then, you know, and this is where the extra granularity of what we're trying to do in the living lab, you know, and this is why it's quite important that we build up a picture of, you know, energy consumption according to appliance and use, you know, and some of the behavioural behind it, because we'll build up that better, more detailed picture and understanding of what's really going on. Yeah. And there's also this novelty factor as well, that you know, this technology is new. We don't know how people are going to use it. I mean, sometimes, you know, and it's well documented this, that, you know, you improve the comfort in the home and someone actually, the occupants then go and actually consume slightly more rather than slightly less. So some of the gains you think you will have had don't get realized. You know, you only get, say, 60-70% of them, because the consumer thinks this is great, I'll turn the heating up a bit more as well on top.
I think there's a huge amount of work to be done in alignment of incentives. It's incredibly difficult to convince. I mean, really, whose incentives are aligned to install this technology in a home? Like a consumer's incentives, they want the immediate payback. I think we've all experienced that moment of signing up, getting to the gym. You're excited about signing up to your gym, and they say, "Well, it's 1,200 quid if you pay monthly. It's 1,000 if you pay up front." Everybody pays monthly. Nobody wants to fork out that front end capex fee. I think we've got to figure out new ways that we can spread amortized costs, deliver these energy as a service, and help the market to pick up these efficiencies. I mean, smart home technology has been that, you know, it's been 5 years away for what seems like the last decade, and I think it's got to be around the alignment of incentives and finding a way that you can cross the chasm, because we're not going to build a market without the early and late majority, and right now we're really only tapping into the innovators. So
strategically aligned payment programs. How can we, even with retrofit solutions? I was talking to a council the other day and they were saying it costs them about 40 grand per house to retrofit. That's obviously one of the really old ones, needs insulation, things like that. No, how are these housing associations who own a huge stock of housing in the UK ever going to transition to technology, to air source heat pumps, to solar, without a sufficient payment program? Because some of the incentives are there. You've got the government kind of putting in different incentives at the moment for retrofit, but that's after you've done it. But who's gonna front that immediate cost? Because housing associations can't do it. They don't have the money to do that. So there's got to be like that, like you say, Alec, that gap between, okay, we know that there's, I don't know, for instance, 15 grand's worth of government incentives, and we know for a technology-led solution on say ours after kind of 80s built will be about 15 grand. So you can almost cover it, but you can't do that immediately because you have to wait. How do we bridge that gap?
Well, they say, like in the car industry, don't they say like BMW is more a bigger finance company than it is a car builder? You know, like, say maybe there's something there about how our energy companies or how we need a new bank maybe for this to actually, you know, get over that hurdle. But maybe let's put that, the finances is clearly a huge issue. I'm going to give you all in a moment sort of like one wish, you know, if you like, for us to going on this journey. And obviously maybe the bank or the strategically aligned payment program would be one of those which we maybe all agree on. But Richard, what would yours be? Or did you have another point you wanted to just make?
No, I could put my wish into my final point. Really, it's more about so with engagement, you need to install product into the home, and connect and understand more about how that home is. And I think the UK government's doing everything right in terms of the next steps, but we always think long term and we never think short term. As I said, you're never going to wake up one morning and just think, I'm going to buy a heat pump or, and a big retrofit. So what can we do in the next 3 years, which goes on that journey of engaging customers? There's many examples across Europe at the moment where the government is putting in government incentives to fund the introduction of products into the home, where I believe that is what the UK needs to do. So stop thinking about what we're going to do in 2030, 2035. Think about what we're going to do by 2025 and reduce the goal and make the incentives and the support available for that. It's a long journey and you don't get there overnight, and we need to break it down to small steps. So mine is all about government utilising that and the power of what they've got to support the introduction and incentives and financing of products for the home.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Maybe Alec, can I come to you next, then Rosanna?
Yeah, my wish is that we grab hold of this decade of technology and business model disruption, and we put it to use, not just to fix our energy systems, but also look at mobility in new ways. But importantly, and to Rosanna's point, we think about the societal impacts of what we are about to do in more robust and systematic, but importantly, human ways. I think we have a once in a lifetime opportunity ahead of us, and we need to do something that deviates from the status quo, because the traditional model has not been working for us today.
Yeah. Rosanna, how about you?
So I obviously agree with what you're both saying. I think maybe mine's a bit more from how people use their home perspective. I think for too long, and this is maybe my real estate hat coming on, so do excuse me, but for too long we've looked to the real estate industry to build the communities that people live in. But the reality is we all live, work, and whatever we do within the real estate communities that one industry is looked to deliver, essentially. And I think my wish is more collaboration. If we were to talk about who understands how people live the most, who understands how people use their home the most, it isn't the real estate industry at all. It's the tech industry, it's the Samsung smart things, it's the Apple devices, it's all of these things that people use that has a whole load of their data. And my wish would be that we collaborate outside the real estate industry or the energy industry. We stop looking to a singular industry to supply a singular solution. We start looking at all of these other people that have been doing it in a different way, that have a whole bunch of data that we would never have access to because that's not where we've been for so many years. And we look to them for collaboration on data. We look to them and go, Samsung smart things, how do people use their home? Apple, how do people use their life? How do people interface with apps on your Apple iOS so that we can make our energy management systems a way that they want to integrate, because they already understand your systems? How do we use the knowledge that's already out there, the expertise that already exists within other industries, to make what we're trying to achieve with net zero buildings an easier transition for consumers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, that would be wonderful. And Ian, final word from Living Lab and your wishes for the future.
Well, one of the things that I think is really important is we find out what works, and what works also with the consumer has been at the heart of this, because unless you please and keep consumers happy, then, you know, sort of you won't have any success with your plans. We need to be a lot more evidence-based. I mean, if you look at the world of medicine, you know, they test and trial drugs out and interventions, you know, before they go and do them. And, you know, sort of the NHS spends a lot of time examining new drugs and treatments and says, right, this is good value for money. So I think this is a call for actually doing more real world trials, you know, and actually studying that. And also it's quite a complex picture, as Rosanna acknowledges, because to do this and to do it successfully is going to involve integrating lots of different devices, lots of different data. That's a massive challenge of doing that. And we just haven't quite worked out the best way of doing that and solving the problem of decarbonising UK's domestic energy yet.
Brilliant. Guys, and Rosanna, thank you so much for your time today. I just want to say thanks to you all, to our speakers, to those of you listening. Thanks also to Living Lab and to Tado and to Alec and Rosanna for joining us today. I hope you found it a really interesting discussion, hopefully inspiring as well. Lots of work to do, but the sort of technology that's out there and the enthusiasm and energy perhaps that's in this virtual room, hopefully will help us on that path towards net zero. So I'm sure if there's any comments for the speakers, I'm sure we'll be very happy to sort of answer questions and things afterwards. So do get in touch with Elemental through the site, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.